Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brandon Davis. I'm the founder of the Rags to Riches community. I am highly unqualified to give you any advice about anything. I barely graduated high school. Do not like or comment on any of my videos, and please do not subscribe. Let's get to it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here. We're back. We're live. We have a title that's bound to get me fired from my day job or probably banned from YouTube. But that's okay. We're going to do it anyway. Let's see what happens here. Okay? Socialists / communist hate HEX / Pulse. In the year of our Lord 9/20/2021. Equality is about giving everyone an equal chance, not about giving everyone an equal result. Well, for a vast majority of Americans, that no longer holds true. It is about giving everybody an equal result, okay? A quality of outcome that didn't exist before about 1960, unless you were in China or you were in Russia or wherever else they practice this. Boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I poop on company time. Now, I don't know. He definitely didn't say that, but it's funny. It will be funny after I explain to you why. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting that thought. Aristotle. So that was a shout out, a stroke to my ego for obvious reasons. If you want total security, go to prison. There you're fed, clothed, given medical care, and so on. The only thing that's lacking is freedom. Blind belief is authority. Blind belief in authority is the greatest enemy of truth. If fascism comes to America, it will come in the name of liberalism. Okay, before we start, we're going to go over a couple things. First, I'm going to tell you straight up, this video is probably going to be pretty long. It might not be, but most likely it will be. This is going to kind of be in depth, okay? So you guys probably won't stick around the whole time, but come back, listen to this. It's going to shake some feathers. These are my observations. Everything I speak of will be through the lens of the United States and the Western world. So if you're somewhere else in the world, maybe some of this applies to you. Maybe you see this in your life. Maybe you don't. Most of you don't know shit about socialism. You don't know anything about it. This will be educational, okay? Most of you don't know anything about capitalism. This will be educational. You think you know, but you don't. Like, you couldn't get up on a debate stage and talk intelligently to somebody about this type of stuff. So we're going to work on that, all right? Very important here. Tyranny can come from the right and the left. And most of you won't see it coming until the boot is on your neck. I tend to believe, based on my observations, that the left is further down that road right now than the right. I will try to keep things fair, but I will also speak my opinion on things. That's very important. The people are the ones that are at stake here. Whether our liberty is exploited by the left or the right, it doesn't matter. It's still an exploitation, and we are the negative benefactors of that exploitation. I want to talk about this too. Politicians are not smarter than you are. Politicians are not better than you. Unfortunately, politicians don't believe that they serve you. It's blatantly obvious in their actions, their speech, how they talk to you. With few exceptions, they mostly see themselves as royalty. And that's our fault. Remember, U.S. and Western world, that's our fault. We need to be that check and balance for these knuckleheads. Okay? As always, don't comment, like, or subscribe, but I do have a sneaking suspicion that that's going to change this video. This will be uncomfortable for some. If I need correction on subject matter, please let me know in the comments. There was a lot I knew about what we're about to talk about, but then as I researched it and refreshed things and dug deeper, I realized that I don't know anything. So, correct me on subject matter that I get wrong. Inevitably, I will. I want to start out by saying this. Socialism in theory, orthodox socialism, Marxists and Engels, does not equal the modern applications of socialism. I need to say that. There are many, many talking points about socialism that are correct. There are many, many talking points about socialism that are incorrect. If you go back and read, Socialism from Marx and Engels, I don't really think they expected what happened in the 20th century, early 20th century, mid 20th century. They didn't expect it. It was a perversion of the original ideas. And I want to make that very clear, and I encourage you all to do your research. All right. Definition of socialism and communism as per Engels, the principle of communism, 1847. Orthodox Marxism. The doctrine of the conditions of the liberation of the proletariat. Now, you guys went to school, the proletariat, the working class, okay, the people that are downtrodden by the rich, the bourgeoisie. It will take control of industry and all branches of production out of the hands of mutually competing individuals. So this is what socialism does. All right, so it takes control out of the hands of the capitalists, the hands of mutually competing individuals, CEOs, whatever the case may be, and instead institute a system in which all of these branches of production are operated by society as a whole, operated by the working class. That is, for the common account, according to a common plan, and with the participation of all members of society. Private property must therefore be abolished, and in its place must come to the common utilization of all instruments of production and the distribution of products according to the common agreement. Okay, so I'm going to read this again, and I think this is a common misconception. I don't think it is. It is. Now, Marx and Engels, they talk about private property must be therefore abolished. Actual private property is not abolished, and they always use the toothbrush, right? You go out and buy your toothbrush, that's your private property. They're not talking about taking that away from you, and that's just what they teach here. What they're talking about is any good or service or anything that can be used to exploit the working class. That's why they talk about the means of production. All right. So private property, meaning the means of production, all of that private property must be abolished, and it has to be turned over to the party or turned over to the people. You can still have private property. You could still keep your house. You could still do this, do that. We're talking about the means of production. That's what that originally meant. But you won't hear that often because it didn't mean that in the 20th century after, the mid to late 1800s. It changed. It morphed into an absolute monster. We'll go over that. So the abolition of private property is doubtless the shortest and most significant way to characterize the revolution. Well, what's this revolution? All right. Now, we talked about private property under socialism. Again, the answer is a society where the means of production, factories, mines, railroads, the energy sources, all the things used to create new wealth are owned publicly, not privately. All right. What is the crux of socialism? So what does it kind of all really boil down to? And now it's a very complicated subject and topic, and I'm really distilling it very quickly, but I want to get the point across. The crux of socialism is how labor is viewed and how extra labor is owned. So surplus labor time is the amount of hours over minimum required for survival. Who owns that surplus? So let's say you make $15 an hour, but every hour that you work, you generate $20 an hour. So who owns that surplus of $5 in a capitalist society? Well, a company owns that. All right. Socialists believe that the fundamental problem with capitalism is that it requires exploitation of the working class. Without exploitation, capitalism ceases to exist. So here's where I split off, right? I can't say I was good with everything before, but this is where I'm really not good. They are saying that you're making a wage of $15 an hour that allows you to be able to provide for your family, or whatever that wage is, $30 an hour or $12 an hour, based on your skills, et cetera, et cetera. But every hour that you work, you actually generate 20. They pay you 15, but you're generating 20 for the company. So they pay you your 15, they keep the $5. They say that's exploitation. Is that exploitation? I don't think so. I call that profit where I'm from, right? And two reasons why I don't think this is exploitation: because anybody can go out and create a company and do this. All right? It's not exploit. You have a choice. Also, you have a choice to also bargain for your wage. What if you don't like making $15 an hour? You can bargain for 20. Well, they might fire me. You can leave. You don't have to take it. You could go somewhere else and work. So you have the choice. In a socialist society, you don't have that choice. And we'll go over that. Summary. So, here's what happens. Socialism is basically a global socialist revolution. That's what they talk about in orthodox socialism. And the way this happens is you have capitalism. Capitalism crashes and burns. People get tired. They see that they're being exploited. And they turn to socialism. So the workers must revolt and they have to take over the workplace. And the second step to that is private property must be abolished. So those are like the basics of a socialist revolt. And Marx was very clear about this. It has to happen just like this. It can't be forced. People have to band together. They have to form unions. They have to get that collective consciousness. They have to gain power and feel good about it. And from that point on, what they do is end up getting more and more emboldened and brazen, and they get tired of being exploited. If they bought into that, they get tired of it. And eventually, naturally, the workers take everything over. The workers turn into unions. The unions turn into political parties. The political parties create a new society. Now, this has to be a global revolution because you wouldn't want a capitalist country next to a socialist country for very obvious reasons. So this is what they talk about. This is how it needs to take place with the orthodox thought and idea of Marxism, socialism. So how do we get there? How does Marx suggest that we move from socialism to capitalism? Form unions against the bourgeoisie. They club together in order to keep up the rate of wages. They found permanent associations in order to make provision beforehand for these occasional revolts. So form a union. You can keep your money up in the meantime. You can negotiate and bargain. You can bust people upside the head with clubs if they don't cooperate. So here and there, the conflicts break out into riots. Now and then, the workers are victorious, but only for a time. The real fruit of their battle lies not in the immediate result, but in the ever-expanding union of workers. So they band together and they start these skirmishes and these battles. And like I said, they start gaining followers, and it's more about the confidence that they're gaining by banding together. All right? It's the revolution. Important to note that through the union, the working class becomes emboldened and assumes a collective, stubborn, and strong identity in numbers. This is called class consciousness. And like I said, the workers band together. They've got unions, new class. They eventually turn into a political party. Marx argues that the rich people divide and conquer the working class to keep them castrated and powerless. Unions will serve to collectively take back power by realizing that the working class has a shared plight. This leads to revolution. So he's saying it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, et cetera, et cetera. The common plight is there's somebody that's keeping you down, and you will band together. That's your commonality. No matter who you are, where you're from, gender, sex, rate, all that. That's your commonality. They seize political power and establish a true democracy, establish a constitution and give power to the proletariat, implement socialist policies, institute policies that benefit themselves. So that's the point. They want to abolish the rich people and they want to institute policies that benefit themselves. They abolish private property and seize control of the means of production. Those are actually technically the same thing. So capitalism, revolution, socialism, and then communism. So what they talk about is socialism is kind of like the first step. So I call it Socialism 1.0. From each according to their ability to each according to their actual work. This is not an actual quote, okay? That's just kind of what this is, all right? They have to make the people okay with understanding that they don't get out what they actually put in. So they're transitioning from capitalism to socialism. After they've transitioned, that's going to be hard psychologically for people who are used to that, the meritocracy, et cetera, et cetera. They have to make people okay with understanding that they don't get out what they actually put in. You can put in a whole lot more work than somebody else, but you're all going to have things distributed at some point equally. So there's a whole stage in that. The next stage is communism, or Socialism 2.0, like I called it. And like I said, these socialism and communism terms, they were kind of used interchangeably back then. So they didn't really hold the same meaning as they hold now. So Socialism 2.0 or communism, as they said back then, from each according to their ability to each according to their need. You must work, but only get what is required for you to live. This addresses the unequal distribution of goods and services. So if you own a company in a capitalist society, and you're exploiting all your workers or making profit off of all of your workers, that has to go away because your company is a means of production. All right? It provides goods or services or whatever the case may be. So, from each according to their ability to each according to their need, they're going to take all that excess and they're going to redistribute it equally. That's the second part. They got to make you okay with the first part. All right. They got to make you okay with understanding that you don't get out what you actually put in. And then after that, they have to really make you okay with actually redistributing everything equally amongst everybody. At that point, the state ceases to exist after full class consciousness congeals. Right? So he's saying, well, everybody's on the same page now. They've taken over. There's a constitution. It benefits the proletariat. There's no need for a state at that point. Here's my opinion. Socialists strive to win the moral argument by first showing that working class labor is exploited. That's step one. That's the rallying cry. And that exploited labor is owned by the rich. Marx understands that in order to make socialism a real thing, they must execute that first step. They have to. It has to be an emotional and logical switch in people's heads to jump on board. So that has to happen first. Otherwise, going straight to equal distribution of goods and services won't make sense and the revolution will fail. So what he's saying is Socialism 1.0, they have to make people okay with that first part. And going straight to communism, going straight to redistribute, like mass redistribution of wealth, just won't work. People won't buy into it. It's got to be a somewhat slower process too. Marx and Engels advocate that after the rise and fall of capitalism, socialism will have the ability to thrive. They think it's a natural progression. That's where it's going to go. But enter Stalin and the Revolutionary Guard. So at this point, we're going to figure out how this stuff starts to get perverted, and I'm going to bring us up to where we are now, current times. Lenin and Stalin's Revolutionary Vanguard. So you had Marx and Engels, and you had Lenin come along and kind of expound a little bit more on socialism and provide some more structure. Well, Stalin comes along and just jacks everything up. I don't think Stalin would have a very good conversation with Marx. Stalin was actually his own flavor, his own tree of whatever Marxism was. All right, very authoritarian. So Stalin actually, he creates a revolutionary vanguard paid by the party to be professional revolutionaries. The common working man didn't have the time to study and wage revolution. So what Marx would probably say, well, this is not what we had intended. This is a dictatorship of the working class. That's not what this is supposed to be. That's not what Marxism is supposed to be. Massively authoritarian. So orthodox Marxists insist that the revolutionary vanguard could be oppressive. The vanguard were dictating the terms of the revolution to the rest of the working class, which defeats the entire narrative. And they were doing top down instead of bottom up. Instead of working class up, they were doing government down. Stalin focused on statewide Marxism and communism rather than worldwide. So this is the first time that he kind of introduced the idea of, hey, we don't want to do this on a global scale. We want to do this on a state scale. And he focused on his country. And during this process, he purged millions to get what he wanted. He had to do away with the ideas that lived in people's brains. He had to chop their heads off. He had to kill them. That's what happened. The frightening thing that I saw while I was researching this, I'm just going to add this. A lot of people who were advocating Marxism online, full-blown socialists, they had a really hard time calling a spade here. They had a hard time saying that Stalin was a bad man. They recognized what he did, but they also tried to justify it. They're like, well, if you were in his shoes, what could you do to change the opinions of all these people that are embedded in your party? You just couldn't do it. So, I mean, what else could you have done other than kill everybody? I found that kind of frightening because the estimates vary. 1.5 million, 50 million, the estimates vary. So, in my opinion, that Stalinist idea, and also Mao took it and ran with it. These were not socialist societies per se. They were perversions of the original, but it was a flavor. It was the flavor of socialism in a way. All right, and I think that's where the weaponized socialism rears its ugly head today. So we're going to get into that and get into what's going on right now. In my opinion, they're powerful state actors that are weaponizing the concepts of socialism. These mostly began blooming in the early 20th century with authoritarian applications of socialism, i.e. Stalin, that we just talked about. Under a capitalist society, not only do you have the right to negotiate your wage and leave if it's unacceptable, but you can create your own company too. You can create your own destiny. Well, that's not going to happen under authoritarian rule. And they don't like that. State actors realize that capitalism's ascent over the past 250 years or so is not by accident. The game theory of capitalism is unparalleled to create wealth. It just is. 250 years. On an economic spectrum from capitalism to complete command and control economies, the countries who achieve the most economically tend to be further towards capitalism. Now, there are mixtures. There are mixtures that work. But most countries tend to be further towards capitalism. And you have the freaking United States there. That's kind of hard to deny. Now, if you're a socialist, you hate the United States because you believe that we've exploited everybody forever. It was, slave labor before that built this country, and then it turned into a different type of slave labor, which was employer-employee. That's what you believe. You hate the United States. I get it. I don't hate the United States. I love the United States. So this is kind of crazy. Here's the plan to take away liberty from capitalist countries. And this plan, like I said, was birthed probably in the Stalin era, 3 or 4 generations of folks. And they weaponized socialism as a means to really tear down a society. I'm going to go into how they do that. Now, let me see this. So the first step is they demoralize a generation of children. They expose them to Marxist and Leninist ideology with their flavor. All right. The second step is they destabilize the nation, the economy, defense, foreign relations. Think about what's happened during COVID. Think about what's happened in the past 8 years or so, the race relations, things like that. And think about how you interact with everyday people in your life. What you see on TV is not what you see in your real life for the most part. It's just not. And the problem is, and this is well documented, you know, if you guys have read 1984, they talk about that apple, right? You look at an apple, what color is that apple? The apple is red. No, that apple is blue. That apple isn't blue, that apple's red. And they torture you. And then they say, what color is that apple? And you say that apple's red. And they say, no, that apple's blue. And they torture you. And you come back, what color is that apple? That apple is blue. And they look at you and they torture you again. Why? Because they could tell that you didn't believe that it was blue. Then they come back again 3 or 4 other times. And they say, what color is that apple? And your brain looks at that red apple and believes that it's blue. And that's what is happening. You can give people all the facts that you want sometimes, and it just won't matter. They'll make an excuse for it, and they won't be able to see reality with their own eyes. I'm going to show you a video about that. So destabilize the nation, create crisis, have the problem of crisis solved by whatever solution that you have. And then normalization is basically the benevolent occupation of government. It could be benevolent, it might not. These are 4 steps. All right. So let's go to this. And this is going to kind of go over those steps. This was an ex-KGB agent back in like 1984. Agent Yuri Bezmenov warns America about socialist subversion.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage intelligence gathering looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate 1 generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. you are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place, and
Yes.
who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents.
Yes.
All right, so what he's saying there is these people who have really bought into the socialist thoughts and ideas, who are really on board with everything. When the dust finally settles and the transition has been made from capitalism to socialism, or this flavor of it, which is just weaponized socialism, when that happens, these people are going to go up with their hands out. And they're going to say, look what I did for the cause. And what are these people going to do? They're going to put a gun to their head. Okay? Gone. And he's saying that they do that because these people are going to join the ranks of the dissenters. They're going to be the first people to go. So they're going to be upset. They're going to want to fight back. They're going to feel hurt. They're going to feel betrayed. So that's what he's saying.
Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not.
Okay. A lot of information there. If you guys want to look this up, former KGB agent Yuri Bezvanov warns America about socialist subversion. You can watch all of his videos. They're completely amazing in the fact that back then he's predicting exactly what has been going on currently. And it's sad. And me personally, I want to help everybody. I do not hate anybody because I understand. I understand that there is a system and there is a state out there that are preying on the good intentions, the great intentions of my fellow Americans, and it makes me really upset. All right. So, how many of you have seen these? Love, 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 right? Well, what is that all about? Let's see if I can get
Well, you
back
spoke
here.
several times before.
Yeah. So how does this grow? He first says it starts with education, schools, television, books, celebrities, etc. Young, impressionable, naive people who wish very greatly to make a positive impact on the world have their minds systematically hijacked. The education received outside the family causes turmoil inside the home. And I'll ask you this. How many hours a day are kids at school? How many hours a day are they in front of TVs compared to how many hours they're talking to their parents? Animosity and disrespect are at the heart of most conversations as kids get older. They're programmed. Everything that they see, it's postmodernist stuff. There are no ethics. You know, nobody is better than another person. Nobody is more right than another person. It's postmodernism. And they pump it into these kids' heads. Traditional value systems are replaced with the illusion of helping the world, but really it's a guise to execute the transference of power from the individual to the state. And they're using kids to do this because they know those kids are going to grow to occupy power in the future. The seed that begins to grow into a sapling, they're pushed further and further away into a world that accepts them for who they are, compared to a world with their parents and family and close friends. Maybe not close friends, but parents and family that are they're judged. We're talking when these kids are young, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. This is when this stuff happens, and it's happens over decades. During these uncomfortable conversations with parents and family, children, in their defiant state, consciously choose to go the wrong direction and adopt a worldview that is cancerous. All right. Why is that important? Why, when you push out reality and you've adopted this new thing that takes its place, why is this a problem? Well, it's a problem because the side effect of that worldview is that their manufactured worldview about class struggle also guides all of their decisions moving forward. They're sent on a dangerous trajectory. And it's outlined. You can see it. Ex-KGB agent defected to the United States, spilled the beans. This is what's happening. We see it everywhere. All right? And it gets worse. Because communism is pitched, or socialism, and again, I want to make this clear, orthodox socialism is not what we're dealing with here. This is weaponized. This is perverted. This is meant to destroy. This is not meant to help the working class. It's nothing like that. It's meant to destroy the United States and in the Western world. Because communism is pitched as solving all the world's evils caused by greed, religion, etc., younger adults seem to think that they have found the single key that can make everything better. Different iterations of the teaching of Lenin and Marx had permeated over the past 150 years or so, but it's important to know that their teachings are simple enough for a kid to understand. So this is why it's so easy to put in a kid's head. It's changing the idea and the thought of right and wrong, like what's really right and wrong, and they replace it with what's just. Okay? And I'm going to tell you about how that works. Eventually, they naturally jump to the conclusion that wiping everything out and starting over is the only way to achieve a better world. Justice. Wiping out institutions, wiping out religion, wiping out families, wiping out people. All right? They are socialists. They don't even know it. But the problem is, if justice in love is the answer to everything, then anything that gets in its way needs to go, including parents, including family and friends. That's how it is. And you guys know it. You guys have seen it. Important concept here. Socialist communist ideology has to segregate society into groups first, individuals second. Again, socialist communist ideology has to segregate society into groups first and individuals second. Capitalism looks at individuals first and the group second. Let's have an example here. Under socialism, if you were born into a rich family, you will not be judged by the content of your character, but the stereotype of your family/group as being rich and being well off. People will see you that way. If you were born white, black, brown, etc., you are the label that your group has been assigned. This is also why speaking out as an individual amongst your labeled group is frowned upon and attacked. You guys have seen that everywhere. All right? Find a black conservative on YouTube. Just put that in and see what YouTube videos come up. It's freaking horrible. It's disgusting. Who determines that label? The people who are attacking determine. It's a mob mentality. The people that disagree with you. You're an individual, but you're an individual second. You're group first. That's the big difference. These kids get older and they start gravitating towards other kids who typically come from lower social strata with similar views on life. They've only seen their parents struggle. They've only seen their environment. It's just been destroyed. And in their minds, they want justice for their parents and family and for the working class, even though they don't agree with their parents' values. In order to get justice, they look for someone to blame for how their parents lived and how they were raised. They all convene and agree that everything on the left is good and just and correct. Everything is seen through the fundamental values of left-wing ethos. They hold in their head that the key is love and justice. The problem is life is complex and can't be solved with one philosophy to live by. The lie is told day in, day out that love is the key. Love is justice. Love is diversity. Love is equity. Love is inclusion. Love is non-judgment. Just love and everything is done. Very simple. Like a moth to the flame, so are the youth to fire. That's what it is. It's my opinion, at least. And I've seen it. I see it over and over. I see it around me everywhere. It splits people. It splits communities and it splits families, and it's just BS. Okay? Life is not simple. It can't be explained in one word. If you have somebody who has 10 times the amount of money that another person has, for these kids, they say, well, justice needs to be done. Let's just take the money from this person and give it to, but it's not that simple, folks. Maybe the reason this guy has 10 times the amount of money is because he made 10 times the amount of right decisions. And maybe these folks started out in the same place, exact same place in life. You know, they're the same color. They came from the same neighborhood. Whatever little thing that you want to say about how somebody could be different. They started out exactly the same. Same freaking parents. All right? It's not that simple. Life is too complex. Kids are too dumb at the beginning to understand that it just can't be explained away. All right? Love is not intended to solve problems that these kids want to solve. It's intended to be used to create a class of mindless puppets to transfer power to political rulers or other states that wish us harm. That's what it is.
Well, you spoke several times.
We see it everywhere. Love, love, love. How many times have you seen it? And well-intentioned people, they see this and they, oh, that's a cool statue. Love, yeah, we love our fellow neighbor. Blah blah blah. It's a slow process. All right, they're programming people, and then they're gonna use this word to justify things in the future. Well, it's all about love, and this person doesn't love, so let's do away with them. And you know, this is in my home. Well, not my hometown, but well, actually, it is where I grew up. And it frustrates me because it's used in so many cities and it doesn't mean what it says. Most people think it does. It doesn't. Just being programmed and conditioned. Inclusion, equity, diversity, winning. Okay? You'll see the language. Morale is low as people don't think they're treated fairly. That's a justice thing. Okay? People don't do their best work or they're going to leave the organization. All right? Organizations do not benefit from the creativity and innovation that diversity offers. Have you guys seen these types of things? What about this? Diversity of people, perspectives, equity in policy and practice, inclusion, justice. Again, to people that don't understand what's just below the surface, this all seems legit, but they're just splitting people into groups. Okay, it's not about equality anymore. Notice this doesn't say equality, it's equity. Equity of outcome, equality of outcome. That's what this is. Equality is gone. Equity is the new thing. Inclusion. Okay, include everybody. We welcome all sizes, all colors, all genders, all beliefs, all religions, all types, all people. We don't judge anybody. Come on board. Hop on board the train here. If you see any of this in your child's curriculum, run. When and where were these ideas implanted? Universities, okay? Back in the 1960s and 1970s, this is when this really began. Marxism and Leninism mixed with postmodernism. So you've heard me say postmodernism. What is that? It's the thought that there are countless ways in which the world can be interpreted, which means that if any way is held in higher regard than another, it could be interpreted as a form of power struggle and or exploitation. It strips people of ethics, okay, because there is no right or wrong anymore. It strips it away. That's the demoralization thing that he's talking about. It's a cocktail disaster if it's planted in the correct way and nurtured. How do they nurture it? Here's how they nurture it. This map is a map of every major university in the United States. Okay, these are the seeds that grow and get implanted in every small town. Now, these are just the major universities. These aren't the small-time colleges that these grad students come and teach on the evenings, et cetera, et cetera. So it is mostly done through universities across the United States and has been since the 1960s and 1970s. That's where it's been planted. Folks in university in the 1960s and 70s turned out to be the leaders, teachers, politicians that guide domestic and foreign policy today. The idea of an unjust and unfair world has been drilled into their heads. And remember, your worldview is the primary driver of your decisions. Some politicians and some leaders, some teachers, some they hide their feelings. But more and more you're seeing that they're coming out. And people have smartphones and they can record things and you're seeing it. It's what we've known all along. We just didn't have the proof. It's happening. Have you noticed that many times the community college or university in your small town does not share the same values as the city it occupies? Have you noticed that building a college or university in a small town is equivalent to political immigration? And over decades, as people graduate or retire from university and settle and set their roots down in that town, you begin to see the city flip. It's on purpose. It's a brilliant plan. It's on purpose. Universities boil cities and towns very slowly. Many underhandedly discourage civil discourse. Many have a subjective view of the performance based on what victimized class you belong to. This is very true. Saw this one time. I'm in college. I do a paper. We're able to read everybody else's paper in the class. It's an online thing. I end up getting like a C, right? And I read 2 papers of people who got A's, and they could barely write a sentence that was grammatically correct. And I'm not exaggerating that. I'm saying 90% of their paper was written without proper grammar. The ideas were out in left field. They weren't cohesive. They didn't come together. So I asked the teacher, what's the deal with this? How could you possibly justify giving me a C and you gave these 2 papers A's? And she told me, she says, it's not an objective thing. It's about what they are capable of. And they get an A because that's as good as they could have done with what they have. How scary is that? That's when it all clicked for me. That's when I figured it out. That's when I started believing it. Couldn't believe it up until that point. Universities, colleges, there's nothing objective. Well, there is. I'm not going to say nothing objective. Obviously there is. But this type of mentality permeates. So why won't HEX and Pulse be accepted as the winds of liberty wane across the planet? Well, based on what you've seen today, why don't you tell me? Australia is feeling the effects and cycles of authoritarianism, each iteration stripping that much more liberty away from its population, a benevolent occupation. So this isn't all at one time. It comes in waves. And each time the defense gets less and the liberty gets less and less and less. So you see these things come in waves over the years, over the decades. Remember, let no crisis go to waste. France, UK, obviously China is far gone, Germany, etc. Got a lot of people that are talking about this in our chat, in other chats. I've seen it in Twitter. People are talking about it. You can't just dismiss this anymore. People know. In terms of the United States, far leftist cities across the United States are deploying unnecessary restrictions. The most outspoken and vocal critics of cryptocurrency, Elizabeth Warren, for example, did a video on that. They tend to be leftists. I've done plenty of videos explaining as such. Crypto creates a potential power imbalance for Marxists, while it creates a hedge against tyranny for the middle and the right. I got to be careful about Marxists. Yes, do they identify themselves as Marxists? Yes. Do they actually follow the tenets of what it used to be? No. It's perverted. They don't know. Like I said in the beginning, most people know nothing about what they're talking about. They're parrots and they're puppets. They just repeat the same type of stuff. It creates a hedge against tyranny for the middle and the right. Crypto creates potential power imbalance for Marxists. Resources must be equally distributed. That's why they're not going to like this. It's got to be equally distributed. You can't 10,000x a coin. You freaking kidding me? You can't keep that. It's not fair. In a socialist communist society, how could one person justify a capital gain of 10,000x to the rest of his community / party / government? How would it make other socialists feel? There cannot be wealth inequality. The high earners have negative buoyancy and the low earners have positive buoyancy. COVID. You look at a picture like this, and I was at this game. This was about 2 weeks ago. 60,000 people. And I'm here to tell you, 95% of those people did not have masks on. 95%. So for you folks that are listening, I look at my Google stats. You're in the Netherlands. Well, I don't know about the Netherlands. I think they're okay. Australia, New Zealand, UK. This is what's going on in America. 95% of people without masks. But then you go to the colleges, universities, and they're doing dumb shit like this. It's just crazy. Same country. All right? Same country. Summary. Things can happen fast, relatively speaking. Look at how orthodox Marxism was perverted by Mao, Stalin, Lenin, etc., and weaponized in order to achieve utopia. If you can't see it, so if you're unable to see what I'm talking about, I know you can feel it. You can feel the discord, the negative discord around you, and you know that something is not right. It's not. And you're picking up on that. You're redirecting it to somewhere else where it shouldn't be because you're told to. You gotta really open your eyes here. Do your own research about this stuff. Prove everything that I said wrong. Just do your own research. Crypto is the very definition of freedom. I repeat, crypto is the very definition of freedom. Pay taxes and do what's right, but push back on the power grabs. They don't have control over crypto. All right? Pure crypto, they do not have control over. And that's your power. You're holding on to liberty in that way. If you've made it through this whole video, I'm super stoked. Comment, let me know what you think about everything, okay? I am here to help people as much as possible. I do not care what political party that you're a part of, okay? I do not. I hold those accountable that are in positions of power. Okay, I hold teachers accountable. I hold administrators accountable. I hold politicians accountable, etc., etc. But I love my people. I love everybody. Okay, you guys are my people. You're my YouTube folks. Not one person that I want to see that fails. So if you guys have questions or concerns, hit us up in the Telegram group. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.